Morning, boys and girls. I read chapter 17 called Holler. When Tiller entered the cabin, he saw Florida standing at the door of his and Sarah's bedroom. "What's that?" Florida asked, pointing to the corner of the bedroom. Tiller peered in the corner, but couldn't see anything unusual. He scanned the room. "You didn't drop me another window, did you?" "No." "Is there a bug in there or something?" he asked. "No, I mean that chair thing." "The rocker?" Tiller asked. "That's a rocker?" Tiller was dumbfounded. "Florida, do you mean to tell me you've never seen a rocker before?" "Well, I might have seen a picture of one, but I haven't never seen a real one." "Hmm, now that's something," Tiller said. "That's a real shame. Here, come sit in it." "Nah, I'll just break it," she said. "You won't break it," he said. "Here, look, I can sit in it and it doesn't break." He settled himself into the chair. "This rocker has seen a lot of use. Sari and I rocked each of our babies in this chair." Florida turned as if to leave the room. "Wait," Tiller said. "Where are you going? Come and try it out." "You're losing your years. I said I didn't want to." Tiller sat there, rocking, overcome with memories of the babies in his arms, of singing to them, patting them, and dreaming. It pained him to think that Florida had never seen a rocker before. He found Florida outside, smashing a branch against the side of the well. He stood with his back to her, as if he were speaking to the trees. "Yep," he said. "If someone wanted to sit in that old rocker, that someone could do it any time she wanted. That someone could rock that chair to pieces. Even if that rocker fell apart, just put it back together again." He patted the nearest tree and sauntered off down a trail. Florida whacked the well with her branch. "Old chair," she mumbled. The next morning, when Sari and Dallas were outside trying out their compass, Tiller heard a soft creak, creak coming from his bedroom. He stood to one side of the doorway and looked in. Florida was sitting in the rocker, gently rocking, and on her lap were two of the wooden bird carvings from the mantel. Florida was stroking the birds, whispering, "There, there, it's okay." Tiller stepped away and slipped out onto the porch and stared through the trees to the creek, and then he looked up to the hill towards the barn. He sat on the porch swing, thinking about himself as a child, a skinny, clumsy boy running through the hills and climbing the trees. He remembered his own children climbing those trees and racing to the barn, and all piled together on the porch swing. He thought about himself in the rocking chair with his children, and he thought about his mother sitting in that exact same chair. Even when he was as old as 10 or 12, sometimes his mother would pull Tiller onto her lap and rock him, saying, "You're never too old to be rocked." Tiller wondered what it would be like not to have trees and creeks and barns, and what it would be like never to have been rocked. I know that's one of Olivia's favorite things. All right, chapter 18, The Trippids. In the Boxing Creek home, Mrs. Tripp sat on the edge of her bed as Mr. Trippett scooted around the room looking for his socks. "Listen," Mrs. Trippett said. "Hear that?" Mr. Trippett stopped alert. "What?" "Silence," Mrs. Trippett said. "Blissful, peaceful, absolute silence." Mr. Trippett relaxed. "Ah, without those troubled twins, things sure are a lot easier around here," he said. He glanced at his wife to see if she agreed with him. Yes, a lot less trouble. Less shouting, she thought. Less yelling. Less scolding. They brought out the worst in her, made her feel so inadequate, but she still felt uneasy now, as she always did when the twins went off to a new home. Sooner or later they'd be back, and Florida would be more Shirley, and Dallas would be more spacey and clumsy, and all the rules would be broken again. Without the twins there, without the 11 children in the residential home, on this summer Tuesday morning, 10 of them were off at church camp. Remaining was just a 6-month-old baby, who was now brought to the Trippids' room by their assistant Morgan, a frail, elderly woman. Morgan tapped at the Trippids' door. "The baby's dressed," Morgan said. "What do you want me to do with her now?" "I don't know," Mrs. Trippett said, opening the door. "Here, Let me see her a minute." "Oh," Morgan said reluctantly, handing the baby to her. The baby stiffened at Mrs. Trippett's touch, and then squirmed as if to release herself. "Stop that," Mrs. Trippett whispered, looking at the baby. "Stop that squirming." The baby instantly stopped moving and stared wide-eyed at the woman holding her. Mrs. Trippett shoved the baby back into Morgan's arms. "Take her for a walk or something." As Morgan readied the buggy in the front yard, she winked to the baby. "Okie dokie, baby. Chief Gopher's going to take you for a walkie." Mr. Trippett hurried down the corridors and past all the narrow rooms to the back door. He slipped outside and scurried down the alley. About 50 yards along was a lean-to shack which he entered. Once inside, he flopped onto an overstuffed musty chair and said, "Ah, peace." As he leaned his head back against the chair and closed his eyes, a thought popped into his head. Life is a fog. He opened his eyes and glanced around. Life is a fog. Did I just think that up? He liked the sound of it, that life is a fog, and wondered if maybe he should write it down. Had anyone ever said that before? He closed his eyes again, hoping that another interesting thought might pop into his head. But instead, what drifted into his mind was the image of a boy who'd been at the home a few years ago. The boy was skinny and quiet, and one summer night Mr. Trippett discovered him lying listless and feverish in his bed. Mr. Trippett had summoned his wife. "Do something! He's sick! He's going to die!" But his wife said, "Calm down, it's just a fever. All kids can get fevers." Mr. Trippett had scurried up and down the long halls, uneasy, ending up at the door to Dallas's room at the back of the house. He didn't know what made him open up Dallas's door, and he said, "Hurry, come with me." And then he led a sleepy Dallas to the sick boy's room. "Watch him," Mr. Trippett begged Dallas. Dallas sat behind the boy's bed and touched his forehead. "He's very hot," Dallas said. "Burning up to bits." I know," Mr. Trippett said. "Should we call the doctor?" Mrs. Trippett returned to the room. "It's just a fever," she said. "We can't call the doctor every time there's a fever in this place. What's the matter with you all of a sudden?" As Mr. and Mrs. Trippett stood there, watching Dallas place a cool cloth on the boy's forehead, the boy opened his mouth and said, "Who am I? Who am I?" "You're Joey," Dallas said. Joey stared hard at Dallas and then closed his eyes and then stopped breathing. "I think he's dead," Mr. Trippett shouted. "Make him alive! Make him alive!" Mr. Trippett rushed to Joey and breathed air into his mouth and pounded on his chest while Mrs. Trippett phoned the doctor. "Help me," Mr. Trippett urged Dallas. "I don't know what I'm doing." Dallas breathed into Joey's mouth. Pause. Breathed again. Breathe. Pause. Breathe. He could feel Joey getting cooler and cooler, and then the doctor came and pulled a sheet over Joey's head and took him away. So Dallas and Mr. Trippett were trying to do CPR before the doctor came. The next day, Mr. Trippett went to the cemetery and stood before his own parents' grave. "What?" he asked. "Who?" But beyond what and who, his mind was like a big empty pot, and he didn't know why he had to come to his parents' grave or what he wanted to ask them.
All right, sorry about that. My computer was dying. Chapter 19, Understone Funds. You smell that? Dallas asked. He was curled in his bed yawning. Florida sniffed. Pancakes. Maple syrup. From below came the call. "Dallas, Florida, breakfast is ready." "Yum," Dallas said, tossing his shoe at Florida. It sailed past her head and cracked the window. "Uh-oh," Florida said. "Just when we've got a whole 2 days without wrecking anything." "Something break up there?" Sari called. Dallas leaned over the railing. "The window sort of got broke. Little bit of an accident," he said. Florida joined Dallas at the railing. Now, are you feeling like punishing us?" she asked Sari. "No, I'm not. Are you feeling like punishing me?" "Why would we do that?" Florida asked. "Exactly," Sari said. "Let's make a deal. If you kids don't punish us, we won't punish you. Okay? And Tiller will show you how to fix that window." Florida elbowed Dallas. She certainly is a goofy lady," Florida whispered. At breakfast, Sari asked, "Anyone seen my blue bowl? The one I usually put fruit in?" "It's on the porch," Dallas said. "You mind getting it for me?" Sari said. "Well, kind of got stuff in it." "Like what?" "Just worms and stuff." "Worms? In my blue bowl?" "Yeah, with some mud to keep 'em from drying out," Dallas said. "Want me to get the bowl?" Maybe not." "Is there a special rule about that bowl?" Dallas asked. "A rule? Maybe I broke a rule about the bowl, putting worms into it." "You didn't break a rule," Sari said. Do you want a rule about the bowl?" "No, but most people have rules about things," Florida said. "Ah, I see. Tiller, do we have any rules here that you know of?" Tiller scratched his chin. Let me think a minute. Oh, yes, I do believe we have a rule about not letting any donkeys on the roof." "Oh, you goofy man," Florida said, laughing. Tiller was making a list of final items needed for the river journey. "One more trip to town ought to do it." "You got enough money, Sari?" "Need to collect a little more from the Understone funds," she said. "What's that?" Florida asked. "A bank or something?" Sari laughed. "Yeah, I guess you could say that. It's our own personal private bank. Two banks, actually. Tiller has one, and I have one. And I'm using his fund for my trip, and he's using my fund for his trip." Dallas added more syrup to his pancakes. "Why don't you just use your own funds for your own trip?" he said. Tiller said, "That way, it's kind of like a present from me to her, and her to me." "So where are these private banks?" Florida asked. "I didn't see any banks around here." "No, they're not real banks," Sari said. "Just holes in the ground, under stones. You get it?" "What? You mean you buried a bunch of money in the ground and just put a little old stone over top of it?" "Well, well, it's a little more sophisticated than that," Tiller said. "Not much, though. We've got these metal boxes, see? And the money goes in the box, in the ground, and the stones that cover them aren't just little stones. They're more like big stones." Sari, Tiller said, "I don't think we should." Florida stopped eating. "Wait, you mean to tell me you've got a bunch of money just sitting out there in the ground for any old thief to come along and steal it?" Sari waved her hand in the air. "Shoot! Hardly anybody ever comes out in this holler." Uh, Sari, Tiller said. So I think Tiller's a little worried that Sari's going to give these hiding places away and maybe the money might go missing. But Sari chattered on. "And how are they going to find our hidden stones out here?" She pushed her hand toward the window overlooking the holler. "You know how many stones are out there? About 1,000,000. She smiled. She smiled, satisfied. "So if you two don't mind tidying up these breakfast things, Tiller and I will on our private banks, go to our private banks and get some money, and then we'll go into town together. Okay?" Dallas and Florida stared out the window as Tiller and Sari set off the hillside. "I'm getting an idea," Florida said. "Are you getting an idea?" Dallas nodded. "I'm getting a tiny little idea about buried treasure. Is that what your idea's about?" "Yep," she said. "And I'm feeling a little itchy to know where they're going." "That's in my idea too," Dallas said. "And I'm getting another idea that maybe those two shouldn't be out there all by themselves, hiking up those hills. You know what I mean?" "Oh, they hike up there and climb up there all the time," Dallas said. "But," Florida urged, "this time they probably ought to have somebody knowing where they are, right?" Think about what she's probably thinking of doing. All right, chapter 20, Through the Holler. Tiller and Sari had lived so long in Ruby Holler, they knew every twist and turn, every path, foxhole, and beehive. They knew where the stream was. They knew where it was narrow, where it was shallow, and where it was deep. They could have made their way through the holler blindfolded. They were familiar with every piece of plant and tree. There was the picnic tree with huge overhanging burrows underneath, um, which they'd often had picnics with their children. Nearby were the tickle violets, which used to make their youngest daughter laugh when she touched them. Near the stream was the bear bush, which had frightened their oldest son once when he thought it was a bear crouching down there. It was beyond the picnic tree that Sari and Tiller split up, each heading
to the others' understone fun. It amused Sari as she made her way through the tickle violets, which she and Tiller had managed to keep their hiding place a secret from each other all these years. Only recently, on Tiller's 60th birthday, had she given him a map of her understone fund so that he could use it for whatever he wanted. And on her 60th birthday, Tiller had done the same. She felt privileged now knowing that the way to her husband's understone fund, and she leaped over a log. She felt as if someone had erased 30 years, and there she was, with her children again. Remember, she's daydreaming this. As Tiller made his way around the bare bush and across the stream, he too was thinking how he and Sari had kept their location a secret all this time. It was as if they had to keep one little secret from each other all those years. But as to why they had kept a secret, he didn't know. Though he thought about what Sari had said about the holler seeming empty after the kids. He wondered why they hadn't talked about it, why they'd both pretended that it hadn't bothered them that their children were gone. Florida and Dallas had only been in the holler a few weeks, and although they had run up and down its hills and shouted across its streams and thrown mud at each other, and scrambled over bushes and up trees and spit in 100 different places, dug up worms near the damp creek, they did not have a very good sense of direction once they were out of sight of the cabin. "I think I saw 'em go up this way," Florida said. "But then they split. Did you see which way they went?" Dallas was imagining that they were tracking pirates who had led them to buried treasure. He narrowed his eyes and surveyed the territory. "They vanished," he said. "Shh, I'll go down here. I'm pretty sure the old man went this way. You go up there and see if you can spot the old lady." "They've got names, you know," Dallas said. "Why are you so grouchy about this? What are you so grouchy about this morning?" "Nothing. I just don't like losing their trail. That's all." He crouched low, examined the dirt, and headed up the hill. Okay, I will read chapter 21 next time. All right, boys and girls, have a good day. Bye.